Hello and welcome to NICTITATING Presents. I'm Sean Malia Thompson. My guest today is Grant Wamack. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Not too bad, can't complain. Almost done formatting your book, so that's always exciting.
Yeah.
So I guess to start off, what made you want to be a writer, and when do you think you became? When do you consider like your first steps towards being a real writer? Like when do you think that was? I guess.
It's a little complicated. So I never thought I would be a writer. I always thought of myself as an artist. I used to paint and draw back in high school, junior high. So I
Okay.
thought I was going to become a comic book artist originally. And there weren't many comic book scripts online at the time. And the
No.
ones I read, I thought sucked. Um, so that kind of worked out in my favor. I wrote my own scripts and I really enjoyed the process and was just writing for fun. And then I showed some of my friends, they loved it. I showed a couple writers, they loved it, and people told me I should submit. So from there, I started submitting. Even my art teacher in high school, I told her I was going to be an artist, but she told me I should really pursue writing. She even brought in one of the writers from the show Lost to try to convince me.
See,
And
that's a
I guess
California thing, man. We would never have in New
this
England.
wasn't, yeah, this wasn't in
Wouldn't it would be
California.
some random guy. It wouldn't be like, here's one of the screenwriters from Lost.
Yeah, this was in Chicago actually. You
Oh,
wouldn't
okay, my
think,
bad then.
yeah, yeah. So normally, yeah, I'm more, you know, I live in LA, but I'm not
When did
from
you
LA.
move to LA? Just out of curiosity.
What year is this? 2023. A few years I've been living out here. It might be
Oh,
three.
okay, see, I was all
That's,
twisted now. I thought you had grown up in LA.
oh no, no. I grew up in Chicago.
Okay, that makes okay. All right.
When I was in the Navy, obviously we'd go to San Diego and LA.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
I
so that's
was
still pretty nuts that she had access to a screenwriter from Lost.
yeah, I was kind of impressed too. Never really, you know, didn't realize the significance of it at the time. Um, but yeah, started writing and submitting shorts, and the rest is history.
So, do you think starting with comic book scripts makes you approach prose with a slightly different approach? God, I just said approach twice.
I would say slightly. I didn't write a ton of comic scripts. It was like maybe a few, and then I had a ton of ideas. I started writing prose poems. This was the time I was on Thomas Ligotti online and
Yeah,
posting
yeah,
a lot there. I was posting early short stories there. So guys like W.H. Pugmire, R.I.P.,
yeah.
was encouraging me to really like submit my stories and really loved my work. So I was really ripping off Ligotti and Lovecraft at the time.
I think a
Uh,
lot of genre writers, when they start, I think my version was Lovecraft because I was introduced to him first. And then eventually I got to my Ligotti ripoffs.
yeah, everyone has their Lovecraft Ligotti phase.
You can
So
always tell because it's super adjectival when it's like the Lovecraft one.
yeah, yeah. I used to write these super long stories that were just overwritten and bloated and full of atmosphere. I didn't care about characterization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Um. Hmm. The pause is when I'm trying to figure out what else to say. All right. Let's see here. So you do a lot. I've noticed. I mean, at least I've read. You do tarot readings. You told me at one point you were a rap manager. I believe you were a model, or at least have modeled at some point.
Yeah,
Um,
I do a lot. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like to stay busy. I don't like being complacent and just
but
sitting
yeah,
around.
that's fair.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been doing tarot readings probably since high school. palm readings as well. So that's definitely a deep part of my life. I even gave a few of my clients tarot readings earlier today. I've been on a psychic hotline before, meetyourpsychic.com.
Oh, you mean like the other end of it, like someone would contact you?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
shit.
So I've done the hotline. I still have a good amount of clients who reach out to me and pay. People still hop in my DMs asking me questions. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I do jiu-jitsu sometimes, a little Muay Thai. I was doing music management for a short time. I still have some connections, but that was a bit of a headache. And then I used to be
it seems like
for
it.
a short time. And I'm trying to think anything else. I think I never really consider myself a model. I kind of modeled for like a candle company as a favor.
You're probably like a model, like I'm an actor, and that I've been an extra in a few movies. But if
Yeah,
someone was like, "You're an
exactly
actor," I'd be like,
that.
"No, I'm not."
Yeah, yeah. Where it's like technically I've done these things, but I don't
I
necessarily
mean, if we're
consider.
going to be technical, I have also been a model, but it was just back in college for random shit.
Yeah, yeah. Same wave. So
That's cool, though. Yeah. Well, okay. So your collection's called "The Hum of the World." It makes a little more sense now that I've read it and edited it and seen the cover. Because I thought initially, I'll be honest, I thought tarot was more of like kind of just like a hobby you had, and then you were like, "Oh, I like the aesthetic, so let's put the palm on the cover," and But I
oh no,
didn't realize it's been like such a
deep
huge part of your
significance.
life.
Yeah, I love esoteric shit. And the occult since junior high. I've been attracted to it. Half my exes are witches and astrologers and Reiki healers and women who hold crystals in their purse and tarot cards flock to me.
That's cool.
So yeah, yeah, it has its ups and downs.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, that's cool though. Yeah. Now, is someone in your family, did they introduce you to tarot or did you come to that on your own?
No, I'm actually very different than my family across the board. None of them are really creative. None of them are really spiritual. I actually grew up Catholic for a period of time.
Okay.
And my parents always thought I was a weirdo, checking out like palmistry books from the library and dowsing books and really studying these type of things. So
Okay, well, that's cool. So you just got into it on your own. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. I'm glad I got those questions out of the way because Tiffany was like, "You have to ask him," and I was like, "I don't know if I want to," but it came up organically, so that's nice.
Good.
So in terms of your collection, it's interesting because it's, I would say, dark fiction. Some of it is horror, of course. I'd say there's a little weird fiction in there. But a lot of it's kind of hard to pin down. Like, not all of it, but enough of it is hard to kind of necessarily classify. So what would you consider yourself in terms of the genres you operate in?
I like to say I have a lot of ammo in the tuck. I
Okay.
operate in a lot of different genres. So I love crime. I love thrillers. I love horror. I love weird fiction, new weird sci-fi, cyberpunk, fantasy. I grew up reading all these genres and subgenres and combination of genres. So I just can't help but do it in my own work as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know with the collection, it ended up being like a lot of stories about, kind of like the mundanity of life, but then the layers of the world are peeled back, and it's like how someone reacts to the knowledge of that juxtaposed with like they still have to go to an office job, or they're like a journalist and they're interviewing a band, and then like they uncover this crazy shit. There's a lot of that sort of like a regular type of person, and they're kind of going through the regular drudgery of life, and then an event or some sort of thing occurs that makes them question reality, and that's sort of where the fear comes in. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, that's definitely safe to say, and it's definitely not a direct reflection of how I see the world, but because I'm so deeply embedded in the spiritual realm and like palm reading and tarot reading, and I've done tea leaf readings and crystal ball readings and all these types of things. I feel like I've discovered layers to the world we operate in, and I try to put that in my work. But yeah, I do think there's a level of fear of the unknown that's definitely present.
Yeah, no, I would say so. But it is interesting because you bring up, so you have a crime book with it's Broken River, right?
Yeah.
And then you have, I think you just announced, forgive me, I didn't read the announcement too clearly. So you've got a book series that you're doing with Broken River also?
Yeah, it's called Melancholy's Finest, coming out this summer, probably later in the summer. Book 1 of the Motor Poppy Chronicles. So
that sounds like it's
sci-fi.
So that's like a sci-fi type of thing. And then you were telling me about this other, I think, novella that seems sort of like maybe like magical realism almost, with kind of maybe fantasy elements.
Yeah, there's another. I mean, it's kind of like horror. Chicago Bullets Entities. I don't really want to put the title out there yet.
That's fine. I mean, I get it.
Figure out.
It's easier sometimes just to say like dark fiction or just like speculative or
yeah.
something. I get that because some of my stuff I approach it and it's like it ends up being sort of crime or sci-fi or kind of thriller aspects, and then if you say just horror, sometimes people have a certain view of what it is.
Right. It's a little bit of a closed box.
Yeah. So sort of almost like a slipstream thing. I mean, not necessarily with every project, but it sounds like you operate in a sort of like multi-genre mode.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even I have a hard time trying to figure out, if a book ends up in Barnes and Noble, should you put in fantasy? Should you put in sci-fi? Should you put in horror? Should it be literary?
I mean, Hum of the World, I would say horror, but
yeah, I'm comfortable putting in horror.
But it is interesting because some of the stories I ended up cutting, like there was one that was good, but it was more, I think, just kind of like a literary. I almost thought it was just a literary type of story. And then so there's a lot of variation going on.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was a weird little thing on the. All right, it's gone now. All right. So let's see here. So you mentioned Thomas Ligotti. Who are some of your other influences when it comes to prose writing or comic books or music or whatever?
A lot of people definitely inspire me. Comics was sort of a love. I mean, books, comics, all at the same time. But Neil Gaiman, people would be probably surprised. I really love his work.
I'm not actually that surprised. You kind of read like a harder Neil Gaiman sometimes.
Oh, I could see that. A harder Neil Gaiman. I like that. Guillermo del Toro, Alan Moore, Grant Morrison's a huge influence. Brian Michael Bendis. There's a weird fiction writer, Mark Samuels. Jeremy Robert Johnson, Wrath James White.
Yeah.
The list just goes on and on. Ton of people,
Yeah, no, that makes sense. We share the Jeremy Robert Johnson connect because I love his work too. I don't know what else to say. I just love his work.
Yeah, he's great. Sets a very high bar.
So you live near an airport, I think.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay.
Actually,
I used to live, when I lived
but
in Boston, we were on the flight path to Logan. So, like, pretty much on the hour, you would hear an airplane going over.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's a lot of planes.
in fact, right now, I don't even think I'm that far off from the flight path in Santa Fe either. So, it's just a running thing of living in a city where I'm somewhat near a flight path. To be fair, Santa Fe is very small, though. So, like, the whole city is probably near the flight path.
I was supposed to say
Um,
I've never been.
it's great. Like, I'm not going to make this too much about me, but we were living in Boston and we went on a trip to Route 66 because I just never been to the Southwest. And we started in Albuquerque and drove down to Vegas over the course of like week and a half. And when we were driving through New Mexico, we just kind of like, there were parts of Arizona that were really cool. Utah was weird. I don't recommend Utah. Um, and Nevada was just like, other than Vegas, when we were going through, I was like, wow, this is like very desolate. But uh, New Mexico, we just fell in love with. So when we came back, this would have been 2018 or something. We I joked like, "Oh, let's move to Roswell," and then it went from there. And my partner looked into the housing prices, and she was like, "This is a lot cheaper, and we could probably do this." So here we are now.
A journey.
It is. It's funny to go from sea level, like East Coast, to just like 6,000 feet elevation mountains, Southwest, kind of West Coasty type thing. Mountains really are the big change, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that the altitudes and
Well, I just
breathing.
I just mean like having mountains in always
Oh,
in
in
like
general.
visual range is such a West Coast thing too.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There are a lot of mountains out here. They're everywhere.
Yeah,
Um,
that's for some reason in New England. Uh, I couldn't. I mean, it's a lot flatter. I guess that's probably why. But you can't. There are mountains, but like, it's not like at any given point you just look over and there's a mountain. Um, I don't know how the hell that works. But anyway, so I mean, obviously, I've enjoyed working on the collection. When did you start doing the stories for this collection? Was it like a certain period, or has it just been sort of going through stories you've had and sort of picking certain ones?
yeah, so it's a little interesting. I had a couple things happen. So I've always wanted a short story collection to come out. I always thought a short story collection would come out before I ever wrote a novella or anything longer.
Yeah.
A lot of these come from over the course of the last 12 years, maybe.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I just sort of started compiling them, the darker pieces, and just kind of find a cohesive theme.
Yeah.
And then I was scrolling on Don Noble's site, not the one with Rooster Republic, but he has another one with a collaborator called We Are Gearheart. Um,
Oh, okay.
and I saw this cover and I felt like I needed to have it. And, I'm super duper spiritual. So I felt like
Yeah.
maybe I could manifest a book with this. And I guess it worked. So that all sort of came together. And then you hit me up not too soon after.
So, which book was that, by the way? Was that God's Leftovers?
No, no, I'm saying the cover for The Hum of the World.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I bought that from him.
Oh, right. Yeah, because you
Yeah,
had,
yeah.
yeah, interestingly, uh, on my end, it was like I saw you had God's Leftovers. Um, and I think a couple weeks after that, I was like, I should hit him up and just ask like what he's up to. Um, and then I don't remember if you told me first or if I saw it first, but I saw that you were self-publishing a collection and I saw the cover. Um, and I just was like, well, if you're going to be self-publishing it, like, do you mind if I take a look at it and do, a little bit of an editorial thing on it, and then we can just put it out through NICTITATING. And obviously you agreed because here we are. Um, But yeah, it's interesting how that stuff works. Like kind of I don't know. I go off of vibes and just like intuitions and stuff. And I saw the God's Leftovers cover and I like read a tiny little bit you had sent me. And I was just like, this is interesting. Like, I think I'd like to work with this person. But it's never anything more complicated than that. It's not like I'm really like, like searching, like very, it's more just like if I see something and it catches my eye, then I'm like, I start thinking about it and I start wondering whether I could do a book with a certain person. Doesn't always work out, by the way.
It's true. But vibes do work. Vibes work.
Yeah, it is interesting that they work because you would think that's a very tenuous kind of way to operate, I guess, ostensibly a business. But I don't know. I'm very much like making the money is nice, but I approach the process more from a kind of like what am I going to get the most out of and like what do I want to see in the scene and like what do I want to contribute, And especially with the books from other writers I pick, that's the case. Like I kind of like just like have a certain vision and I'm like, this is the existing kind of landscape and like this is what would add to it and this is how it would maybe change the look a tiny, tiny bit. So yeah, it's not an exact process. As stated, sometimes it does not work out. But yeah, vibes. So I know it's hard to pick, but if you had a favorite story in the collection, what would you say it is?
I didn't think about this at all. A house lay deserted. I feel like it's such a clean, good, I guess somewhat traditional horror story.
Yeah.
I really love that. But Fire in the Black Night, it's definitely grown on me in terms of like the surreal aspects.
Yeah, that one did go through. I would say that one, Hum of the World, and Cardboard Citadels have probably gone through the most changes.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. Cardboard Citadels especially. I'll be honest, when I first read it, I was like, wait, what? Because it went from, I would say almost a more Legatian type of like, a man goes to this sort of like cardboard city with the homeless population, and then it's like this strange thing happens. But now it's much more like, I don't even know. Like I've been saying, it's sort of reminiscent of Under the Silver Lake, just in terms of the vibes. I know you haven't seen that movie, but like, I don't know, something about it. I'm like, it operates almost in the same sort of space now.
Yeah. It's definitely, when I was reading back over it, and I kind of hate the writer in a story cliche, like the writer writing about the aspiring
I get it. I do them sometimes.
Yeah, and I was reading it, and I don't know, I felt so annoyed with myself, and I was like, I gotta add some life to this and turn it on its head.
Yeah, you definitely... It is not where I thought, when I said expand, I thought you were going to like, it's just like he has a crown and then he's walking the city or something. And you were just like, nope, here. And I was like, okay. I like it though. I don't like, it's not like I hate it or anything. I love it. But it went from like a more kind of like, I would say sort of like a low key chill story to now I'm like, wow, this is one of the wildest fucking stories in the collection now.
Yeah, that's true. It did go from 0 to 100. So
it's not a bad thing,
Yeah.
I'd say my favorite, it's hard to pick. It's hard to know too when I'm in this point, because it's like I just spent the last 2 months just like kind of mainlining the thing and like going over it like really in depth. So it's hard to like, when you're that close to something, it's hard to really be able to go like that one. Because you've just spent so much time, like, all right, like, so it all sort of jumbles together. But right now, I would say, in terms of like personal favorites, probably like House Lay Deserted is definitely up there. I really, actually, my favorite is probably Rolling with the Gods, which is the last story.
Oh, I don't know why I forgot about that story, but that's one of my favorites too. That's a story I wrote last year. The heavy jiu-jitsu
Yeah,
influence.
yeah. I think I just love that it's like, I mean, I'm not going to spoil it or anything for people that will read it, but it's basically about a fighter who starts doing this sort of experimental drug to help him and just where it ends up going from there. I think just because like I don't know, I can't think of that many stories that are just like a horror story about a fighter. Like I can think of a couple, but not many. Um and then the Dreadheads too. I really like that one too.
Oh yeah, that's a fun story.
It is.
Uh,
That's like more of a classical almost horror type of thing, but with just sort of a certain approach to it, I would say. Um but yeah, it's hard to pick. I mean, there's a lot of bangers. Um So going forward, I mean, as we've said already, you have a couple more books lined up. Like, is there anything in particular you want to try, or do you just sort of go with like, okay, this is what I'm feeling right now, so I'm going to try this?
um, I've done crime, I've done bizarro, um, just did sci-fi,
Yeah,
horror, extreme horror. I felt pretty I don't think there's something I haven't covered.
yeah,
Um, I've thought about maybe doing something more literary involving fighting or boxing or MMA.
yeah,
Um, but I'm usually guided by passion and intuition. So like every writer has certain ideas that have been scrapped or maybe put aside on a side burner.
yeah,
But yeah, as long as I'm passionate about it, I write it. Um, and it tends to work out in my favor.
yeah, yeah. No, you gotta work on what you want to work on. I don't remember, maybe almost a decade ago, I was like joking with my sister and my mom about like what would be a really marketable book, and we like hashed out like, okay, this is what would be a marketable book for this time. So I started writing this like YA thing, and like I
Oh
crapped out after 2 chapters because I was like, I just do not give a single shit about this.
yeah, yeah. I thought about jumping on the YA wave. I thought about jumping on the zombie wave. But I feel like if you're not feeling it, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I guess my version was like, for a hot minute, I kept trying to make like a sort of like Lovecraft homage type short story work, and I could never really. I think maybe once or twice I got it to work out of like 20 attempts at like short stories. Just for whatever reason, I'm
Yes.
not good in that mode.
I feel like it's challenging to pull off because there's so much. I feel like that space is
Right,
oversaturated.
that's the other thing is like when I'd go, oh, well, it'll be this, it's like, well, there's already 20 stories that are better about this. So, but yeah, I mean, go with what works, go with what feels good, as long as it seems correct in terms of writing. That does not
Yeah.
apply to the rest of life,
Right. Right.
thankfully.
That's very different.
um, so you said you grew up in Chicago. What was that like? I mean, I know that's sort of a simplified question, but
Um, yeah, that is a broad question, but it was okay. I mean, a lot of families out there. It's definitely very cold.
yeah,
Um, but it's definitely given me sort of resilience and a little bit of grit that I feel like maybe if I grew up somewhere else, maybe I wouldn't be the same Grant you're
yeah,
talking to today.
yeah,
But I feel like that applies to anyone in any city. But definitely a big influence on like Black Gypsies, very much set in Chicago.
yeah,
Another unreleased book set in Chicago, and definitely very much like in the urban landscape um, as well. So I don't know if that really answers your question. I
no,
mean, it's
I
so
mean,
damn cold out there. I hate the snow, so
Oh, I hear you
That's
now.
why I
Yeah,
live
I
in
mean,
LA.
yeah, I grew up in New England and then Boston for about a decade, and
Oh, yeah,
you
you
get,
know the pain.
yeah, you get to the point where you're like, I never want to fucking see snow again.
No, never again.
Like we even get snow in Santa Fe, but it's just like it's like West Coast snow, I think of it like. So it's like you'll get a foot and it'll be melted within a day. So that's nice. And you're just like, wow, this is already gone. Nice. Um but yeah, I feel you. I mean, I definitely know that like when people interact with me that are just like native Santa Feans, New Mexicans, I come off a little surlier. I don't mean to, but like
I could see that.
it's just
I
like
see that with
Boston
the
is like
Boston.
it's okay, but it's like some of the rudest people you'll ever meet.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to live in New York, in the city,
Yeah.
and I felt like everyone was so aggressive and rude. I was getting sick and tired of it. And when I moved to LA, I was sort of shocked because people say people are vain in LA. There are vain people in
Well, yeah,
LA.
they're vain
But a
people
lot of
everywhere.
people are pretty chill and nice. They would say, "Good morning, how are you doing?" And I'd
Yeah.
feel standoffish, like, "What do you want from me?"
Yeah.
But they were just being nice. A lot of these people are high off weed. They're
Right. I'm
chill.
convinced too
So,
the nice weather helps because
yeah, the sunlight, the vitamin D,
like yeah, actually
definitely.
getting sun definitely helps. It's funny,
Yeah,
Boston's like if New York was somehow meaner. I don't know. Or maybe just drier. I don't know. It's like it's just like New York, it's like someone will be rude to you, but like they'll be overt about it. They'll be like, get the fuck out of the way. Boston, it'll just be more like if you talk to someone, they just look at you like, why are you talking to me? So maybe it's that holdover from like the puritanical kind of Plymouth Rock bullshit, but it's basically like if New York was somehow less friendly.
yeah, I can see
Could
that.
be all the Irish people too. I'm Irish, I can say that.
Yeah,
Um, but anyway, so we're at about 30 minutes, and I'm sort of running out of shit to ask. Is there anything you want to ask me? Keeping in mind that this will be recorded and, you know, put on
yeah.
the internet.
I usually don't have anything wild
Yeah,
to ask you.
I didn't think you would, but
But have you ever had a tarot reading or palm reading before? Psychic reading? I'm just curious.
my sister gave me a tarot reading. I don't know how official it was once. I've never, I mean, official? No. No, I've never really had an official palm or tarot reading. My sister read my tarot one time because she used to be Wiccan and is into that sort of stuff.
Oh,
I don't know if
yeah,
she kept up with it. In terms of palm reading, there was probably a party where somebody was like, I'm going to trace your like lifeline. But like, I don't think it was anything. It's weird to say
deep.
official, but it wasn't like,
No, I get what you're saying. I've done some readings at parties, and honestly, it tends to be a little bit of a party pooper.
yeah,
People
yeah,
ask
I can
serious
imagine.
questions about the relationship and
Yeah, because I'm sure at a
certain
party,
things.
people think it's just going to be like, oh shit, you're
Yeah,
going to win the lottery, or like, yeah, you're going to.
yeah, this is gonna be fun.
Right.
You
And
know,
then you're just like, well, this is what I see. And people are like, I'm
yeah,
going to
it
go
gets
drink now.
yeah, it gets dead serious. So
So, yeah, to answer your question, sort of, but like not officially.
okay, all right. Um, have you seen any UFOs?
Technically, yes. Not
Yeah,
in,
I was about to say
surprisingly,
Santa
not
Fe,
in Santa Fe,
Utah,
though.
definitely.
One day in Massachusetts, maybe 8 years ago, it was like 2 in the afternoon. I was driving on the highway. The interesting thing is I literally gave my story to someone in Goddamn Zombie. Like it's verbatim what happened to me, but I was driving on the highway like 2 in the morning. Full disclosure, I've done a small amount of acid, small amount of shrooms, no seeing the eyes of God shit, but like I have done hallucinogens. So part of me
Yeah,
does wonder like, well, is this just some bizarre hallucination? But anyway, just need to say that in the interest of for the people that are already going to be like, well, have you done? Yeah, I have. Um, But I was driving and I saw this, it looked like a single passenger plane, like this very silver, single passenger, small kind of plane. And at first I looked at it and I didn't really think that much because I was just like, oh, whatever. It's like a person who has their own type of plane, you know? But then I noticed it was sort of coming down at like a 45-degree angle. And like when I kind of stared at it more, I'm like, well, that's sort of weird that it's like almost headed like straight down. And then it burst into flames. And then I was like, wait, what? And I don't mean like like I've seen footage and, I've watched movies where planes catch on fire. It'll start with like the engine and then the rest will slowly. This was just like someone like snapped and the whole thing caught on fire. And then it like disappeared like, behind the tree line out of my sight. And I was like, oh shit. And I waited to hear like an enormous explosion and nothing happened. And I went home and I checked the news and there was nothing on the news. And to this day, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that was. Because the thing that makes me think it wasn't a hallucination is like, I'm an X-Files fan. If I'm going to hallucinate a UFO, it's going to be either a black triangle or like a traditional circular saucer. I'm not going to be hallucinating a single... That's a really boring... And during the day, too. So
I mean, I feel like there's definitely something to it. I mean, they're hallucinogens. I've never seen a UFO,
I also intentionally was like, what's the lowest amount I can take where like I will feel stuff, but like not heavy hallucinate. So like I did once on both. So
yeah,
but it's funny. I talked to I'm forgetting his name now. There's this guy that does a podcast called Desert Oracle that was coming through Santa Fe, and he did a live show. I'm just blanking on his name right now, but he was doing a kind of like, you could get stuff signed at the end, and we went up to him and like, I told him that story, and I was like, what is that? And he was like, you're actually not the only person that's told me they saw something that looked like sort of like a cigar shape, like silver, or like a passenger plane. So he's like, you're not even the only one that has told me they've seen that sort of a thing. He was surprised it was during the day, I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I'm sort of bummed it wasn't like at night, like in a spooky field or something. It'd be a much better story. But
yeah, I mean, it happens in broad day.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, there's any number. It could be experimental aircraft. It could be, there's some people that think it's like people from the future. I mean, how would I know? Aliens, interdimensional, whatever. I'm just saying what I saw.
Well, I think it's real.
It was real. I think it was real. I just don't know what the fuck it was.
Yeah, that's always hard to tell. I've seen the most UFOs I've seen are all in LA. So,
really? I haven't seen one out here yet. I'm still waiting. I'm sure there's. I will say we had. You'll probably be interested in this, and I can send you the file because I wouldn't believe me either. But like I have it recorded. We were doing my podcast, Celluloid Citizens, and there was this weird sort of like vibraty type hum that happened. And at first I thought it was just like a plane going over, and it lasted for a little too long. So I was like, okay, maybe a military plane. And I'm still like, maybe it was, but it was just bizarre. And it got like really loud, but no one else on the podcast said they could hear it. So maybe they just weren't, listening that clearly. But like I recorded this like, maybe a minute long, weird kind of vibratory hum type of thing. And when I was done, I was like researching like what is that? Like, was there a military plane around the Santa Fe area? Or like they would say. They wouldn't say, but
it was the hum from my book.
Yeah, well, no, but so I looked into it. There is this thing called the Taos hum, which is about an hour away. And it's this phenomenon of, it's very similar, just this strange kind of humming. Like this, like, hum is sort of a misnomer. It's more like just like a very loud vibration-y, almost sounds like an engine, but not quite. I can send you it, but
Yeah.
and some people think it has something to do with like the earth moving, kind of like tectonic plate type things. Other people think it might be some sort of experimental military stuff, but it's just like under the ground, so that's why it sort of sounds weird, not like a regular. So I don't know, but there was that happened. So that's the weirdest thing that's happened to me, at least in New Mexico so far.
That is pretty weird. I'm happy to hear this. So
Yeah,
I feel
I'll
like
send
everyone
you
should have.
It's weird too because it was like where I'm
experience.
sitting right now. Like you would think, like, oh, I went on a camping trip a few hours away. No, it was just like sitting where I am in the center of the city. So that shit's sort of bizarre. So yeah, I mean that. Yeah, so that answers that.
Good, good. I'm happy. Um, those were the big questions that were
Yeah,
really.
yeah. So I answered those. So yeah, I think I'm gonna start wrapping this up, but I'll do my whole spiel now. So The Hum of the World by Grant Wamack should probably be available by, I would say, at least the end of April. It's a great collection. It's real trippy. Cover slaps. And so that's going to be out from, obviously, NICTITATIng Books. And yeah, so keep your eyes open for that. And there will be other books, but I don't really want to say too much about them right now because most of them are mine and I have no idea when they're going to be done. So,
Yeah.
but
Smart.
anyway, yeah. Thank you for coming on, Grant.
No problem.
And
It was a pleasure.
yeah, thank you. And everybody else, stay tuned. Keep your eyes to Twitter and Instagram and all that goodness. And yeah, more news on the way.
More news on the way. Cop that book when it drops.
Hell yeah.